Well, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Shit Talk with Paula Soho. I am so happy that you're here this week, yet again, listening to me once more. This week's episode, I feel like I haven't caught you guys up in a while about what's going on with me, mentally up here. And I have some thoughts to share that have been kind of marinating for the last couple months. And I feel like, although it's my personal experience and what I'm going through right now, it could possibly resonate with a lot of you, just because it's very relatable feelings that we all experience when we're in our 20s, or literally any time in our lives, but specifically when we're in our 20s. Lately, I felt like I've had an identity crisis, and I'll go a little bit more into that, but I just am so lost at the moment with like myself and who I am and who I want to be, what I want to do. And a lot of that has been because I have over-identified with my chronic illness. Since the moment that I was diagnosed, I have been so heavily involved in the idea of it, living my life a certain way, explaining to people, over-explaining to people what my diagnosis is, what I have, and stuff like that. And while that's all been great for the healing process mentally, it's been an experience to be so open about it, and it has helped in the acceptance process tremendously. I feel like I've also hit a wall a little bit now where I just I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to even identify with the fact that I have Crohn's or POTS or endometriosis. I'm sick of it. I am so tired of that just being what I breathe, eat, and sleep constantly. It's what I talk about all the time, not just because it's, a part of my life, but also because it's kind of my work now. TikTok for me has been a complete safe space and my outlet since the very beginning, somewhere that I could go to talk about my feelings and share experiences with people and know that I'm not alone. And in the process of that, I've had the privilege of helping so many people as well feel the same way. I recognize that that is something to be so grateful for, the fact that I even have a platform to have a voice and that kind of stuff, and to have the ability to be someone's light in such a dark time. That for me is so fulfilling, and it has been since the very beginning when I started. But it kind of became a little bit tricky when that kind of went from being my outlet to all of a sudden becoming my job. And now I'm at a point where I don't know if I want to continue doing it. If I do continue doing it, then I'll have to figure out some capacity in which I find the balance, so that I'm not completely heavily involved in just talking about my journey and my chronic illness and stuff like that, because it gets heavy. It genuinely gets heavy on me, and sometimes I just wish I don't want to even acknowledge it. I don't want to even give it a moment of my attention. I just want to live my life and be normal. So a lot of what I've been feeling in the last couple months has been because I just want an escape finally. I feel like for 2 years, it's just been entirely who I am, and I'm afraid that that's who I'm becoming. Just the sick girl, literally all I talk about. People ask me, how's work? Oh, work is good, and then I end up talking about chronic illness. People ask me how my life is. Life is good. But then I end up talking about my chronic illness. And then people ask me about school. I can't go to school because I have chronic illness. It's encompassing my life entirely, and I'm kind of going a little bit crazy about it. I have had multiple mentee bees about it because I'm just I don't know how to move on from here, and I don't know where to go next. I mentioned before in my It's Not a Setback, It's a Redirection episode that while my sickness did derail my plans entirely, it also gave me a whole new direction to go in, which is this advocacy route, exactly what I'm doing online now. And at the moment that I made that episode, I was so confident that that's what I would be doing for the next little while, or for as long as I have planned. And I honestly feel like a fraud coming on here and being so confident in front of you guys, giving my own advice to you and not taking it myself. That episode that I made about It's Not a Setback, It's a Redirection, I should take that quite literally to heart. But at the moment, I'm just this ball of anxiety, and I have no idea where I'm going next. I talked about school a while ago on here, and in that episode, I was almost certain that I wasn't going back ever, that it wasn't something that I truly wanted to do. But after analyzing my thoughts in deep, deep detail, I've realized that that was my subconscious protecting me, convincing myself that I did not want to go just because I was so fearful of going. And I still am. I'm so scared to go. I'd say that I'm a 60% certain that I want to go, but at the same time, the rest of the 40 is just like fears that I have. Fears that I won't be able to do it. Fears that I'll fail, that I won't be able to manage on my own. And it sucks because I really do want to do it. And I want to live normal experiences as well. I feel like going to university and moving out are both very integral parts of growing up in your 20s. And I feel a sense of FOMO just like sitting around and missing out on the opportunity. Another thing that I've been kind of debating is going back to school, because like I thought for a while this is like a really good thing that I have going with TikTok and advocacy and my opportunities that I have along the same lines of the chronic illness community and world. But now that I'm like kind of straying away from being so heavily involved in that, I want to find a creative outlet, something so far from what I'm doing now, something completely quite the opposite. And I feel like that would be really healthy for me and like a very important step to take in my life. Even though I'm scared about it, I want to challenge that fear and do it. Something that's been really on my mind recently and weighing heavy on it is the fact that I feel like my chronic illnesses have affected my self-worth entirely in my relationships. A huge fear of mine has always been just being recognized as a sick girl. And in my relationships, I feel most often that that's who I am. Whether I like to admit it or not, my chronic illnesses take up so much of my life. And at times, it feels like I literally just get lost in it. And I get lost and I forget who I am. It's actually funny because I took a year off from dating and just anything romantic with anyone. And in that time, I felt the most secure and content that I've ever felt. Like with everything, I've accepted my chronic illnesses, I've accepted my situation, I found hobbies and interests that I liked, and I was building a Paula post-diagnosis that I was satisfied with and that I was really, really happy with. But having kind of begun to like date again and with things with Mustache Man too have shown me that chronic illness is unfortunately something that takes up space in any relationship. And it's hard to acknowledge it while also not over acknowledging it and just, sounding like a burden constantly. So I've been really hard on myself recently because I want to be transparent with the people around me about how I'm feeling and my situation and all that. But at the same time, I don't want to weigh heavy on them, and I don't want to be like an extra thing that they have to carry around. Feeling like a burden is such a shitty feeling, and I'll do anything and everything to avoid that. But at the same time, I have to accept that this is a part of my life. This is a part of me. It's not entirely who I am, like I've said before, but it does take up some space in my life, and it's important to acknowledge it. It's just, I've had so much difficulty finding the balance between when is it too much, because I'm constantly telling myself that I feel like too much. Even sometimes I'll ask for other people's input on their opinions on how I'm managing my chronic illnesses. Like if they think that as an outsider perspective, do you see me as just my chronic illness? Because I feel like sometimes that's the case. And I asked Mustache Man that the other night. I was like, by the way, I know I talk about it a lot because it is a part of my life and you're learning with me. So I want to explain and help you understand the best that I can. But if you ever feel like I'm talking about it too much, literally just tell me to shut up and I'll stop. Which like is a really shitty thing to have to say, because it's like I shouldn't have to limit how much I talk about it and how much I tell people. At the end of the day, like this is something that I deal with, and it's also how I cope and stuff like that. But I'm just really terrified of being identified as just someone who's sick all the time. I actually had a conversation with my dad about a week ago where I was just kind of telling him that I'm just like so lost. I have zero plans for the future for the first time in my life, which terrifies me because I used to be an overachiever hyper planner. And he told me like, it's okay. A lot of us feel lost. Even I feel lost. And this man is like 45. So in that conversation, I realized these feelings that I'm experiencing are so normal, and they're just heightened even more because on top of the confusion of not knowing what to do next, I have the uncertainty of not knowing where I'm going next. Chronic illness is just so much uncertainty. Like you can't predict what you do tomorrow, the following day, or even in the next hour because you don't know what your body will be up for. And that part adds so much more anxiety to my feelings of confusion already. So I had to kind of step back and give myself the recognition that I deserved. Like I said, wow, you're so valid for being stressed and confused on school and work and all that stuff. But on top of that, you also have to realize that you're dealing with a lot. All those feelings that come with chronic illnesses, feeling like a burden, feeling like you're going to fail because you're not going to be capable, like that all contributes and makes the ball of anxiety a million times bigger. So just like acknowledging that all these feelings kind of come together and make it one big confusing one, it kind of really helped me and reassured me that this is so normal what I'm going through. And it's almost expected for me to be going through this at this age and at this stage of my diagnosis and in my journey. And since the moment that I got sick and I realized how precious life is and how little time we really have, I made a promise to myself to only go where I spiritually grow. And at the moment, I just feel stunted with like TikTok and everything. I feel like trapped in this cycle of talking about my chronic illness and identifying with it and then being upset that that's entirely who I am, which sucks because I used to feel like it was this very beautiful thing that I was completely and 100% sure of. But at the moment, I'm just like, I feel like my purpose is elsewhere. I put a lot of pressure on myself to have all of these answers right now, to have the direction and everything, but I have to remind myself that if there's anything I've become good at, it's just going with the flow. One thing about chronic illness is the fact that there's so much uncertainty. You know, you could be 10 steps ahead today and then tomorrow you might be 20 steps behind. And I've learned that a huge part of diminishing your anxieties around that kind of uncertainty is just to accept that it is what it is. And this is where I am now, you know, focus on the present and to let go of tomorrow and what it might bring. And I wish so badly that I could apply that practice to school and other aspects of my life. But something that I've also come to learn is, considering that I've had so much uncertainty to deal with, and I've become an absolute master at dealing with that in my chronic illness journey, the things that I am in control of and the things that I have the potential of deciding, it's become extremely overwhelming to me to have to think a million times, is this the right decision that I'm making? Is this in my best interest, you know? Because it's not something that I can just let go of and be like, yeah, this is in the hands of the universe, whatever happens, happens. Like, no, this is me deciding. I have full reins over it. I get to drive the car in whatever direction I want it to go. And to think that I am fully in control in that aspect gives me so much anxiety, like you guys don't even know. So at the moment, I don't know where I'm going. I don't even know what's coming next. And I barely even know who I am. And we can all thank chronic illness for that, because I feel like ever since my diagnosis, it's just derailed my life entirely and kind of made me feel like I'm meeting myself once again and rediscovering who I am and who I want to be. I hope that some of you are listening right now and resonating with some of the things that I've touched on. In case you are, I'm going to share some of the things that have helped me in finding a balance between my illness and my identity and rediscovering who I am so that I feel like I'm more than just a diagnosis. I feel like I am ultimately the same person as I was before I got diagnosed. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm on this never-ending journey of meeting someone entirely new. Part of it is because being sick to that severity teaches you a lot about life and about people and your own qualities and values and that kind of stuff. So I've been rediscovering myself quite a bit recently. And it's been a really cool thing to have that opportunity to just rediscover who I am entirely. Part of the reason why I identify so deeply with my chronic illness is because for a while, that's all I was. Like, I was a patient in a hospital bed for more than a year, and I was a patient at doctor's appointments and a patient that couldn't leave her bed. Like, I didn't have a life outside of being sick. But as I got a little better and as I had the opportunity to go out and do things or even just like use my energy for things that genuinely interested me, that's helped tremendously. Every single opportunity I have to get up out of bed and use my spoons, I've made a promise to myself to try a hobby or an interest every single day that practices my creativity and makes me feel like I'm doing something outside of just being sick. I have had so much time in the last couple months to sit around and do nothing, and that drives me absolutely insane. Because another thing that I've identified since I got sick is my behavior and how once I was able to step back on the treadmill, I will go, and I won't give myself a break. I feel like I have so much time to make up for all that time that was lost in the hospital bed and when I was unable to do things. Now I'm constantly pressuring myself to keep going and to find a way to be productive with the time and energy that I do have. And I'm working so hard to retrain the brain in that aspect, because the reality is some days I just need to do nothing. Some days my body can't physically do anything and I'll have to lie there and rest and give my body a break. But I haven't been able to fully do that because in the meantime, I'm constantly just beating myself up for not being productive. So that's been a learning process as well. But in that process, I've learned that there are ways to exercise your interests that kind of accommodate for your situation. So for example, if I'm lying in bed on a flare day and I can't do much, but I still want to practice my creativity, I'll pick up a sketch pad and I'll draw something out, maybe like a design or something that I have in mind. And that comforts me, because even on a day when I feel like I am incapable and I'm just entirely my chronic illness, I'm able to tap into that creative side of me and prove to myself that, you know, I still have interests and hobbies and things that I like to do aside from the fact that sometimes I can't. I made a list last night actually about things that I love and things that complete me and make me the person that I am. And that exercise helped me so much to just see on paper that I have so much more going for me than just my diagnosis and my chronic illnesses. It was kind of a breath of fresh air to realize, like, it might feel sometimes like this is just who I am, but the reality is that I'm not, and I'm so much more than that. Another thing that I've done since I've made like this 180 from talking about my chronic illness 24/7 to not wanting to talk about it at all is having the conversation with those around me, those closest to me, to only bring it up when I give them permission. Like, I literally had a conversation with my mom months ago about not bringing it up to the family and talking to the family too and telling them, like, this is a very sensitive topic, let's not touch on it. That alone has helped me so much, and I recommend having that conversation if you guys feel like you're in the same position. There were moments where I would run into an old friend or have a conversation with someone and they just wouldn't mention it and they wouldn't talk about it. And I would leave feeling like this huge wave of relief and thinking it felt so nice to be normal. I wish it was like that all the time. The reality is it can be like that all the time, you guys. You are in control of your story. Like I've said before, you are allowed to tell people when you want to talk about it and when you don't. Putting that boundary up is so healthy, and if you feel like it's necessary, I highly, highly recommend. It's definitely hard finding the balance between this is a part of my life and this is entirely who I am. But with practice and just by reading my own triggers, I've come to realize that I'm allowed to put it aside if I want to sometimes. I'm allowed to be in control of the conversation and tell people that I don't want to be recognized for my chronic illness. And sometimes it's nice not to hear about it, not to be asked about it. That part has been groundbreaking for me to realize that I can be in control. And another part is to just acknowledge the fact that I have so many interests and qualities, and I'm a whole person outside of my diagnosis. I might not know exactly where I'm going or what my plans are for the future, and I might be entirely lost. But those are very real, valid feelings to be having, considering everything that I've gone through and the time period of my life as well. I wanted to talk to you guys today about these feelings because I know for a fact I'm not the only one experiencing them. And to those of you that are feeling this way, my best advice to you guys is to just give yourself some grace and remind yourself you're human, you're experiencing a lot more than the average person does. Having an identity crisis after your diagnosis is almost expected, I think. It's part of the acceptance process. It's part of moving on with your life and finding a way to navigate your new normal. And while it's extremely heartbreaking to feel like you lost parts of yourself, it's also really beautiful to understand that you're relearning and getting to know yourself more and more every single day. There is a lot of opportunity for you to reconnect with yourself in ways that you didn't even know were possible before. You know, you might discover that you have new interests, new hobbies, certain ways of thinking and beliefs. All of those things are good things, and with time, you'll come to learn them. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I want to ask you guys for a huge favor, and that is to comment down below or DM me on Instagram, comment on my TikTok about podcast episodes that you'd like me to talk about. I run out of ideas sometimes and I could really use the help. Thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for continuing to grow with me and learn with me. I wish I was an expert in this field, but unfortunately I'm not. I'm just sharing my journey as I'm going, and I hope to God that it resonates with some of you and helps you in some way or some capacity. I love you guys. Be gentle with yourselves and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Mwah.